Coming to you live from the desk of the therapist. Super excited to be with you all today. I have a very special guest in the podcast who has decided to come and bless the podcast, and I'm super excited about it today, y'all. But without further ado, I'm going to ask her. She'll be kind enough to introduce herself to the people.
What's good, everybody? My name is Danyette Smith.
Hey, girl. Hey. Thank you so much for taking the time to come and bless the podcast. I reached out to you, and with no hesitation, you was like, yes, I'll do it. So thank you. I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. Because you big time.
No,
you big time.
No, we stay humble over here.
Absolutely. No, in real life. In real life, we stay humble. But you lead a very, very, very important initiative for the city of Indianapolis as it pertains to domestic violence. And domestic violence is something that a lot of people are impacted by. And so I felt compelled to have this conversation and this dialogue with you. But if you just take a moment and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Yes, so I am a mother of two daughters. One is 22, one is 18, active in church, and then outside of that I have an organization as well. I'm the only girl of siblings, the youngest, so you know how that, I can't say you know how that goes, but it goes a certain way when you're the youngest and the only female.
Yes.
And then I have a nonprofit as well, so I've dedicated, since leaving my abuse, dedicated a lot of my time to my nonprofit until I started the role with the city.
I love it.
Thank you.
Thank you. So tell us, if you don't mind, a little bit of your personal story and kind of how this evolved and that anointing came on your life for you to now do what you're doing. But a little bit about the background of your story, please.
Definitely. So I met my child's father roughly about 2024. Probably was before that. I can't remember the exact time, but we were together for 2 years, and then I got pregnant. Those first 2 years was a bliss. I can't say before I met him, like, what was in front of me. It was like the drug dealers, the fast money, all the things. So, you know, with my first child's father, stay at home, wanted to do my daughter's hair. I'm like, nah, that ain't what I want. I want this. Yeah. And that's what came to me. First 2 years was great, and then right after I had my daughter, about 6 months later, is when the first blow came. The first blow came, hit me right in the eye, so I currently sit with plates. I have plates in my eye that's holding my eye socket together. And from there, the physical abuse just escalated. There was nothing that showed me like, oh, he's abusive or anything of that nature, but the control. There was control that I didn't recognize until I got out of it. From the physical abuse, I stayed for about 4 years without telling anybody but my best friend, who was also my neighbor at that time. She knew what was going on, so anytime it happened, I was able to run to her. She would help with the kids, all of that. And then after that is when I finally, one of my cousins was like, let's go to lunch. And I'm like, okay, lunch. We went to lunch. She sat me down and she was like, the spirit is telling me you need to tell me something. And then it wasn't no spirit at all. For me, let me take that back. I went to church, but I wasn't connected.
Yes, okay. I got you.
And I was like, girl, the spirit is tripping. The spirit ain't telling you nothing. And then she repeated that again. And then that's when I told her what I was going through, the surgery that I had, that my family was there for. He was there for, was for being hit in the eye. So she came up with a plan. That was a Friday. Sunday, we had a family meeting. Monday, I was going to college, leaving my car there, and then somebody took me back to the house. At that time, if most people know drug dealers, once they gone for the day, they gone. So once he left, we literally packed up the entire house within about 45 minutes, put it all in storage, and then I moved with my mother. So that was when my family found out about it. Stayed with my mother for about 6 months, graduated from college. And then the first apartment that I got, because I was able to get a job, first apartment that I got, he was helping with the deposit. So when I moved into that apartment, he moved right back in. Not understanding that a plan needed to take place once you leave domestic violence, not understanding anything about the honeymoon stage and all the great words that they tell you. So So then that's kind of when the isolation stage began, when the family was like, okay, you lay him back, so you can't call us no more. I dealt with that for a while, and then in 2014, and it was, I mean, from physical, once the physical abuse happened, the emotional abuse, the financial abuse, to where if I didn't do something he liked, he wouldn't give the money for the rent. Again, this is the breadwinner. I went from my associate's degree straight into my bachelor's degree. So he would withhold the money, and then I would get evicted from one place. We'd move into another place. Thankfully, back then, they weren't doing it as bad as they are now, where it's popping up on you, it's following you.
Right, yeah.
So I can be thankful about that. But then it went to gun violence. Because my family was aware of the physical abuse, I couldn't walk around with black eyes. It went to putting a gun to my head and telling me if I leave, I would be killed. At that moment, I knew I was in something, but I still didn't know how dangerous it was until February 6th of 2014. I wasn't texting back quick enough, and he texted and said he was coming to kill me. At that time, it was okay, another day with domestic violence. I'll go home, we'll argue, we'll do whatever, and then it'll be another day until I seen a white car pull up in front of my job. When that white car pulled up, he popped the trunk with the shotgun. I froze for a second, but then I ran and locked the front doors. Well, he knew the side entrance to my job. So as he was going to that side entrance is when I grabbed the cordless phone, ran and hid, and called 911. From February 6th of 2014, I have not looked back at all. Restraining orders, all the things. I went through the full 9 yards. Can't nobody tell you it would be easy. There was times where I didn't eat, only my kids ate after that, but we made it through, and here I am on your podcast today.
Absolutely. Blessing the people with your story. That is awesome.
Yes.
And so let me ask you this, because I know to that point, a lot of times as women, in those situations with men of that caliber specifically, there's a sense of loyalty. And so no matter what, you have that victim mentality. And so no matter what, you feel a sense of, I'm not going to say anything to anybody. How'd you get to where you're like, forget this, my story needs to be heard. There's power in my voice. How did you get past that part of worrying about still protecting him and his image and his reputation, and understanding, no, I have something that I need to say, and this is about me, and this is not about him? How'd you get to that place? What was that process like?
I like that you asked that question, because it's funny, when I left, God had already implanted Silent No More, just because I was silent. He named I named the organization Silent No More, but it was about 2 years into my organization is when I went to a women's conference called Game Changer. And from that, a seed was planted in me and was like, okay, there's no longer, you can no longer be silent. You can tell your entire story. Just don't use his name. It's your story. It belongs to you. Tell it. So I was already doing the work, but when I was doing the work, before anybody even know why I was doing it, they didn't even know it was attached to me. I did it for my kids. So most times when victims flee domestic violence, they're like, okay, we're done, we're gone, let's move forward. Well, I went back to my kids. I apologized to my kids, but then I wanted to know, how did this affect you? So because they're 4 years apart, what my oldest was saying versus what my youngest was saying were two different things. So I got to really understand what they were going through, but then ask them, what do you know about domestic violence? So before I gave them anything that I went through, I wanted to know what they knew. So I wanted to teach them. And then once I realized they didn't know, their friends didn't know, I was like, okay, that's where I start. It's easier to pour into the kids than it is an adult, because you got to break them down, then build them back up. So I did 2 years of just focusing on the kids and educating the kids. And then that's when those students and the church kids was like, okay, well, my mother is going through this, or my daddy does this, and can you talk to my mother? And then it kind of rippled into that, but it started with being a game changer.
So I want to stay in that space, if we could, for just a minute, because working with a lot of clients, again, they have that sense of loyalty, or they make excuses. Like you said, you hear the I'm sorry's and I won't do it again, and then it happens again. When you think about the conference, a game changer, but also has to be an alignment, not with this, there's a connection with the spirit, a connection with the mind, but then you have to actually take that first step. What was it that really got you, that kind of plateaued you into, or not plateaued you, but, pushed you into that place to where, I got to do this for my girls. And then I want to understand the importance of the apology, because that's big.
So what was crazy is while I was going through domestic violence, I didn't understand it. So the word domestic violence was big. Like today, it's a word that's common,
Yeah.
but back in 2008, 2012, like you barely heard it. So all I really knew was a man wasn't supposed to hit a woman's not supposed to hit a man. So it wasn't until my bachelor's degree when I child and family welfare was my concentration. I was working in the abuse was the course, and the cycle of domestic violence was in that. And that's when I learned what domestic violence was. Majority of the women that I work with today, the main focus, or even survivors in general, men too, the main focus is the cycle. Like, because everybody's in their own place. So I have to focus on the cycle and them understanding that all those I'll never do it again, all those I'll go to counseling, I'm sorry, makeup, sex, the flowers, the roses. That's a norm. It's no different from you, her, him. Like, it's the norm. And when I hit that with them, when I hit it to them on that, they're like, that is what happened the last time. Or it's even some that I've connected with that went back. But then when they called me back, because they're going to always call me back if they go back, they're like, it happened. It happened the exact same way that you said it with that cycle. So most of the times we try to focus on the cycle itself because that's the evidence of knowing that's the only way you're going to break it.
Absolutely. So the apology
for my girls.
For your girls. Why?
Well, I feel like as a parent, as an adult, one, they didn't choose to be here. I had to apologize to myself.
There you go.
First.
There you go.
And then I feel like I should have apologized to them. There was no actual reasoning of saying, I took you through this or I did this because I was lost myself. It was just more so of, I apologize. I apologize for the now, but even moving forward, because even though we're out today, it doesn't mean that there's not any long-term effects. Let me apologize for those now and get you the help that you need now. But those apologies came differently in different ages. So my oldest, I seen her immediately acting out. When I left and we stayed with my mother and then we got our first apartment after that, I seen the change of her immediately. I mean, she went from having it all to not having much. Yeah. The change came. So I had to sit down with her and I had to just apologize. When my youngest, it was just a little different for her. She's a go with the flow type girl. But that apologies is important. We as parents are still human. We will make mistakes. Yes. And I think children, they need apologies when we know that we've made a mistake or there is an area that maybe we lacked in. Once we can identify that was a lack and the kids were affected by it, apologize.
Absolutely. Had an opportunity, we mentioned earlier a friend that we had in common, mutual friend, and one of the hashtags that during the mentorship of her adult mentor program that she had, perfectly imperfect, and that's okay, and then understanding that. But I too, as a parent, understand the value in apologizing to your children. I've had to do, I had a 2-time teen mom, first child at 16, second child at 19. I didn't know what I was doing, right? So, you learn and you grow and evolve, and to your point, you see the impact of some of the decisions that you made consciously, unconsciously, but you were present for your child is what it said. You were present, but along the way of me being present, there were some opportunities that I can reflect on and say, let's sit down and have a conversation. And I would love one day, I'm going to do a podcast, and I'll tell my best friend things I wish my mother would have told me or things I wish my father would have told me to help lace our boots. But because we're parents and we've learned, we're taking a different approach with our children now, right?
Yes.
So we want to lace their boots. We want to say, let's have a conversation. I care about you mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically. And so that's awesome. I want to spend the time intentionally in that space because parents, it's okay.
It's okay.
To apologize to your child and then have that important conversation about the why. And it speaks to your love for your child. So I want to hear more about the organization now.
Yes.
Talk about that, please. So
Silent No More is my baby. It's like a toddler, young adult now. But, it's been 10 years.
Congratulations.
No More. Thank you. As for the youth, all for the youth, pouring into the youth, churches, schools, any organizations that allow me in. And then once they started coming with their parents, their aunties, their cousins, their brothers that needed assistance, I'd seen myself pour more. And I really tried to pull away as much as I could. Was like, no, I'm not working with adults. Here's a resource. Get them over there. But God wouldn't allow me to. So, and it really hit in 2020 when COVID hit. I was really at a place of, okay, I'm using my own because I didn't have any grants. I'm using my own money to pour into it. Yes. I'm
Won't he will?
trying to look.
Yes, he will.
I'm trying to raise these kids. I'm trying to finish my degree, like, because I got kicked out of school. So I went back to school. I was trying to finish it was just so much that I was like, you know what, let me pause Silent No More. As soon as I said let me pause Silent No More is when I got a grant for $35,000 unrestricted.
Goodness.
He was like, ain't no pausing.
Yes.
So at that time, COVID had hit, shelters were at half capacity. I reached out to two other larger organizations and was like, okay, with this money I got, I want to take $20,000 of it and house women at that time it was women in hotels. So I went out and I partnered with a few hotels, and the other $15,000 I was able to use to build Silent No More. So more so the computers, the laptops, the systems, and with that, then I was able to get more money from the Domestic Violence Network, partnering with Fireflies, and we was like, they were like, okay, well, we're going to get this $100 and some thousand, and we're going to pour it all into you, and you house the ladies, and you house the survivors, and then you just keep doing what you're doing, and then from there, it just continued to grow. It continued to grow. I love it. It's my baby. I still the youth is my passion. We know
mine too.
Our future is our future.
Those are my babies.
We got to pour into them if we want to see different. But I also know that adults, they need it, and we have to try to balance the scale eventually with the abusers as well.
Absolutely. So then we transition now, or evolve, to your role with the city. So talk about that and how that happened.
You see these gray hairs now.
They did it.
So at that time, 2020 hit. Indiana has seen 183% increase in homicides related to domestic violence. Then that's when the mayor was like, okay, the city needs a program. So the city did their thing as far as vetting. And then I was asked to apply. I applied. And then I got hired. Now, the tricky part about it was that they handed me a blank piece of paper. Because I was like, well, what y'all want me to do?
Right, they don't know.
And they were like, well, here's a blank piece of paper. And I'm like, well, that's kind of hard. Because, most people got two businesses. But one may be photography and the other one may be something totally different. So it's easy to mend them. But for me, having a organization that solely focuses on domestic violence, I was like, okay, well, this has to be different. And it has to be big. So then I was like, well, let's see what's lacking based on what I've done these last 8 years at that time. And what I seen was there was like, we were all working in silos, the agencies. There were some things that we would partner on, but when it comes to really trying to work together, nobody was doing that. There was doors that I couldn't even get in before this position. So the first thing I wanted to focus on was domestic violence agencies. And I built the program in a 4-tier program. Well, not even tiers. It's just like 4 things that I focused on. And the first thing was domestic violence agencies, to where we meet monthly now. So I wanted to make sure that we all come together monthly, what's working, what's not working, but ultimately building a trust to know that there's not one agency that can do it alone. I don't care if you've been here 35 years or if you've been here 3 years. We need each other. Absolutely. The second thing was the first thing I would say, because I always say it first, is survivors and victims. I wanted to make sure that we fill the gap and streamline for victims and survivors. And how we do that is that when they call us, we'll do one intake and then we'll streamline them to where they go. Most agencies, most people in the community, they'll give you a piece of paper. Here's a list of domestic violence agencies. Call one of them. About the time you get to the second or third one and you hear a no, or you don't, you can't get to this program, where we don't re-traumatize them. Absolutely. They just gonna stay. Absolutely. So the goal was to reduce or even eliminate that re-traumatizing, and saying, okay, we'll do the intake, but then we see that maybe Salvation Army has 2 bed spaces available. Call them, get that bed. Or we see, this shelter, so we're streamlining them to the shelter. What agencies have therapy services? So instead of you trying to figure out what services for domestic violence, let us streamline you there, but then fill the gaps when it comes to the barriers. Most victims stay, whether it's because of child care, it's because the abuser pays the rent. How can we fill those gaps, but then make sure you have the resources to move forward the next month? Absolutely. And then emergency shelter placement as well, when it comes to maybe the shelters are full, kind of like these last 3 weeks have been. If it's a high lethality, and I didn't understand that the community didn't know what high lethality means until I started using it. But a high lethality means there is a chance of homicide. Yeah. Maybe a gun was involved, maybe strangulation was involved. Then we would utilize our outside resources outside of a shelter to house them, to get them into safety, to prevent a homicide. And then the third thing, because I had already said domestic violence network, the domestic violence agencies, the third thing was our first responders.
Okay.
So I partner with law enforcement. So we've done ride-alongs. We want to know, how do you do domestic violence when you go to the scene? How do you work that? How do you respond? Do you have compassion? Do you have empathy for this victim? We sat down with a day with the detectives. We want to know, how does the process work once it comes from the beat officers into the detective's desk? How do you not assign a detective versus assigning one? So we were able to get the full understanding of that to the prosecutors. So building the relationship with all of them, we're able to work with our victims and say, hey, has a prosecuting advocate contacted you for this case? And they say no, and we're like, okay, we got you. And we streamline it, like, okay, we got this victim. So we're able to work with our first responders, but then also they send us things, because there are a lot of victims that don't want to work with law enforcement. I totally get it. I didn't want to press charges. I just wanted to get away.
Absolutely.
And those victims still need services. So the prosecutor's office may email us and say, hey, we have this victim. They don't want to press charges. They don't want to work with law enforcement, but they need services.
Absolutely.
So then we're able to service them and get them the things that they need. And lastly, the community. We focus on the top 10 zip codes here in the city of Indianapolis where domestic violence occur. I'll throw one thing out. There's been 30,825 calls for domestic violence in 2023 alone. So those top 10 zip codes with 46218 and 46201 as the number one and number two, we try to focus in those areas with resources, community events and things of that nature, or even just partnering with the businesses. 46235 was one of the ones that were on our top 10 zip codes. Well, out of that, we partnered with Glick, and we were able to train Glick with DV 101. So even though we're flooding your residents with resources, let's make sure when they come to the office, they know that they won't get evicted because they're telling you that they're being abused in the home. So that was huge as well. So those are kind of the four pillars to the program, is what I would call them.
You got me over here like I got goosebumps and chills, and I'm just like, this is awesome. I'm so full.
Thank you.
No, thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you. This is big, and I know to whom much is given, much is required. I can only imagine the mantle, but we'll get to that. But I want to talk about these glasses, so I don't forget about the glasses. But let's talk about the glasses for a minute.
Yes. So most people be like, she always wear glasses. Everywhere I go, I have a pair on. I don't care if I'm just running to the gas station. But the glasses represent those who are still walking around with black eyes, those who are still being abused from domestic violence. So when I had my black eye and I had to have surgery, I had a nice big pair of sunglasses on. And ever since then, during that time, they represented me while I was in it. When now that I'm out of it, I represent those who are still in it. Ultimately, I want to be able to produce a sunglass line where proceeds
as she should.
And proceeds go to domestic violence agencies.
Yes.
So
Oh
Gucci.
Okay, there you go.
Look.
Shameless plug right
Shameless
there.
plug. It don't even got to be Gucci, but y'all get me.
Somebody help a girl out. I love it. I think people would say, your why should be evident, but I don't want to put words into your mouth. So what is your why? What is your why for your mission? What is your why for this purpose you're walking in? What is your why?
So my why is I am who I needed. That's 100%. I am who I needed. That's my why. Whether it's for the youth and who my kids needed at that time or an adult, like I am the person that I needed when I was walking through this journey.
Oh, girl. It's a blessing.
Thank you.
It's a blessing. I'm sitting here thinking and hearing the journey, opportunities for cultural competency, because people often have a heart to serve. They want to do something. They don't know what to do. Or to your point, they think they're doing something and they're not really doing something. But when we talk about cultural competency or cultural awareness of how to engage, what is something you would say to lay somebody's boots when you're engaging with someone who is a victim of domestic violence? And to your point, thank you for bringing that up, male or female. What do we need to be aware of when we're engaging domestic violence victims?
I would say the main thing to be aware of is that there is no just dead level or no certain level that all victims should be on. You have to meet them right where they are. And if you don't know how to do that, I would say connect with someone that knows how to do that, because ultimately it can hinder them. That's the main thing I would say.
No,
I don't, because it's hard to just say, do this and do this for somebody who's going through it, when really I always say, connect with the advocate. Because if you call me and you can be like, well, such and such is going through such and such, then I can lead you. So the main thing I would say is contact the advocate. You're more than welcome to contact me, let me know what's going on. But then if it's a family member or a friend, making sure if you don't do one thing but create a code.
Yeah.
And if they text you that code, then you know that's an emergency there.
Yeah.
Ultimately, a plan needs to be in place. Because other than that, that survivor, that victim is going to plan to fail, and then they're going to be right back there.
Absolutely.
And then you're wondering why they keep going back.
Absolutely.
That's the main thing is connect. Domestic violence it's a realm of things, and connecting with an advocate, because everybody's story is different, is the main thing that I say.
If someone is currently in a domestic violence situation, speak to them for just a moment, if you would, and what do they do?
If you are in a domestic violence situation, you are more than welcome to contact our agency. The first thing you would do is, are you safe? Can you even contact us? Do you need to email? Do you need to text? But get in a place where you can contact us. And then once you're able to do that, then let us know what it is that you need. If it's something where you need to leave immediately, or it's a physical abuse, pack a bag. Make sure you got your medicine. Make sure you got your important documents. Pack a bag, leave, and then call us. Let us try to get you into some shelter. But ultimately, safety is first for us. Give us a call, and then let us walk you in the areas that you may need. You may not need to leave. You may just need a restraining order to get that person out of your home. We want to make sure that you have what you need. You have support from a team of survivors. The entire team is survivors that can walk the journey with you. I don't know what your journey is until I walk it with you. So give us a call, and we'll meet you right where you are.
I'm sending you hearts. Hearts are coming your way. I love it. And let me ask you this. We talked a little bit about financial abuse, mental abuse, of course, the physical abuse. But if someone is undergoing psychological abuse or emotional abuse, is that domestic violence, or how would you deem that?
It's definitely domestic violence. It's the worst. Physical abuse, you couldn't tell I had surgery in my eye. If you would have met me in 2014, though, you would have seen mentally how damaged I was in my walk, in my talk, in my not having eye contact, head always down, defensive when you say something to me, super defensive. I believe that's more damaging than physical abuse itself, because it's just stuck in your head. And until you can have those affirmations, until you can start speaking life into your life, then you're stuck in that situation. One thing I can say is it's the hardest, though. It's the hardest to get out of, only because if you call a high lethality shelter saying that you're being emotionally abused, it's not considered a high lethality. So they're going to be like, okay, well, you need to put a plan together, and let's see, you got to stay, and let's see how we can get you out, because there's no physical abuse. It's nothing that's harming you, but not understanding that mentally you're being harmed, which is more damaging.
Absolutely.
It's hard to heal the brain.
It is. It's a process. Hard. And what I tell a lot of my clients is, and they immediately come to therapy and they think that as soon as they start therapy, I'm going to be healed, I'm going to be delivered, I'm going to be set free. But that was years of trauma, years of that neglect, years of that abuse. And so we have to unpack that, day by day, week by week. So if you're doing a weekly session, it's like, sis, we're getting there, but it's a process. And so understanding that. But I want to just for a moment. So if you have someone who was in an active, is what I'll call it, domestic violence situation. Now they've since separated. However, they have children with this individual, and I'll say he. We'll use the male as an example. And sorry, guys, but in this situation, but he continues to pop up. Maybe he pops up at the kid's school, or maybe every now and then he'll send a message through your friend, and he just won't go away, and he's still making threats of harm to you. How do you handle that? Would you handle that situation as though that individual is still in an active, same household DV situation? Or do we take different steps because they're separate?
Well, the domestic violence still occurred. So they would still give us, this is what happened, we're separated now, the individual is still threatening us. So then we would go into it's a protection order or something. And we would explain the protection order, because most people think it's just a piece of paper, but I tell you, that piece of paper carries a lot of weight. And that protection order could basically prevent him from being able to come to the house. If the abuse occurred in front of the children, it could prevent him from coming to the school or having that contact. But ultimately, it's going to be family court. When it comes to those kids, and the exchanging of kids, it's going to be family court that ultimately makes that decision. But that protection order will do a lot. Because you can call the police as many times as you want.
Absolutely.
They're there to just de-escalate. That's it. If the threats are not proof, if you can't prove that they're threats, meaning that there's a text message saying that I'm gonna harm you in any way, whether shooting, hitting you, or whatever it is, then there's nothing that the detectives can do. So it's going to be that protection order, or even getting a person in the middle. Do you have a friend or do you have a parent that you can drop those kids to, and then he pick them up from there? There's apps as well. The courts have apps to where you can use those apps in the court of law. And then that literally prevents the majority of the abusers from saying what they really want to say, because they know they're being watched, and they can pull those documents because they know it's y'all too. Absolutely. Compared to the text messages now, where you can use the text now and say all the things that you want to say. But that family court makes a big deal. So we will always implement protection order if children are involved and they're still making threats. Let's do family court as well.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I got. It's just a heart of gratitude for you right now.
Can I say one more thing?
No, we got a lot to say. But yeah, go ahead. Absolutely. Say what you want to say.
You had said, as far as being therapist and week to week, one thing that kept me going through the after of fleeing domestic violence and rebuilding my life, and when my kids were acting up and I noticed that my daughter was sleepwalking, bedwetting, poor school performances, like I seen all the things that were related to domestic violence. One thing that I continue to tell myself is that I'm not going to see 10 years of unhealthy behavior and relationship change in a week, in a month. So it literally, even in years, I was repeating that to myself. I can't expect 10 years of unhealthy exposure to my kids to be changed so quick. So I gave myself grace when things were going bad, and even gave my kids grace when things are going bad, understanding that they went through that domestic violence. So it ain't going to change overnight. Honey. It's going to be hard before it gets easy. That part. But it makes a big difference. It is possible. And it will happen. It will.
Especially when I'm your therapist. We're going to get that thing done.
The therapist, they need it. I promise. They need it.
As we transition, just a couple more things. If you would look into that camera and again, just speak life, encourage somebody, let them know they can make it, they're not alone. But just take a moment to do that for our audience, please.
Yes. If you are a female, even if you're a male and you are going through domestic violence, you can get out of it. It won't be easy. It'll be extremely hard, but you can do it. You have to pour life in yourself. You have to believe in yourself. But then you also have to make a plan. Get that piece of paper. Write down exactly what it is that you want to see every day, that you want to achieve. Look at that piece of paper every single day. And until you start checking those off, continue believing, continue doing. Faith without works is dead, so you got to do. And continue to walk. Grab a friend. If you don't have friends that's pouring into you in your empty cup, then you need to get new friends. With the isolation stage, if you in it, embrace it. Embrace that isolation stage and tap into yourself during that time, because that's a time for you and yourself.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You are welcome.
Two more things. Okay. You'll be kind enough to give your affirmations and then tell people where they can find you on social media or wherever you want to be found at.
So when you say affirmations, I'm like, I got so many of them. Let me write this down. And I can just say one thing that I did when I left my domestic violence is I could say for the first 2 years, I had sticky notes all in my bedroom, all in my car that I was and I wasn't just reading them, but I literally were saying them out loud so they can go back into my ears so they can really resonate in my brain. But I am bold, of course. I am beautiful. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I would be on the top of the mountains and I would be in the valleys, but I would still keep my head facing forward and keep my head up. What other ones do I have? Because I just have a lot of them. I am more than a conqueror. Yes. I can't remember all of them because you got me right on the spot, but at the end of the day, I am a survivor. Yes. I am a survivor.
Yes. Love snaps. Some of us say hearts and love snaps. Do you feel the love? I feel the love. But last, where can people find you on social media?
Yeah, so you can find me on social media at Danyette Smith, DanyetteSmith. Facebook, Instagram. You can find it on TikTok too. Don't go over there because that's my goofy side. But yes, you can find me. Facebook is more active. You'll see a lot of my story, a lot of the work that I do in the community as well. Just in case you need some uplifting or anything of that nature, they can find me there.
And let me ask, if someone wants to partner with you or say, I've been a victim, or this is passion work for me, or I have donations that I want to give, like, what are the opportunities there? Can people partner with you? Can they give donations? What does that look like?
You can partner, we can collab, you can give all the above you can do. And then, so you can just reach out. You can reach out at champions with a S at Indy, INDY, P as in Paul, S as in Sam, F as in Frank.org. Or you can inbox me on Facebook if it's easier for you. You can do that as well. But let's chat. Let's see. Even if it's just using your voice, if you're a survivor of domestic violence and you want to use your voice to impact, we want to make sure you healed. But then let's go. Let's run these streets. We have opportunities of events that you can volunteer at. We're doing a volunteer service where you can be a court buddy because we do protection order courts. If that's something you want to be trained on and try to do some work with the victims that we serve, you can do that as well. But I would love, even if it's just let me pour into you, you pour into me, we can do that too.
Yeah, I like it. I love it. You're so sweet. I love it a lot. Anything else that's on your heart that you want to leave with our audience today?
No, just know that 1 in 3 women go through domestic violence, but another thing is 1 in 3 teens go through domestic violence. Parents, caregivers, guardians, make sure that you love it on your team, but you also listening to your teens as well, because they're going to date. Love is the most powerful thing outside of the one that you believe in. So make sure that you're talking to them. It's an uncomfortable conversation, but talk to them, because 1 in 3 are experiencing teen dating abuse, and we want to make sure that your teen is not that 1 out of the 3. So understand that, and I'm here. You got any questions?
Awesome. Thank you.
You're so welcome.
For blessing the podcast. I want to tell you I love you. I want to tell you that I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
Because it's not easy, baby, when you have to do it, but you've carried that mantle, and God's blessings is light and shining bright on you.
Thank you.
So just keep shining bright like a diamond.
Thank
really.
you.
Yes. Oh my goodness, y'all. Oh, wasn't that amazing? I am full. But I want to tell you all to stay encouraged. You are not alone. You are not by yourself. There is help. There is resources. There is support. Just take that first step. The first step, picking up the phone, making that call. After this podcast, you will see a list of resources that you can tap into to get you some support and some help. But again, know that you are not alone. This is just the beginning. You get to decide. You get to decide what's next for your life and your future. So take ownership. Do that thing, and you got this. But until next time, know that I love you, and have an amazing day intentionally. Let's get it. Let's grow. Hey.